The rise of the Taliban brought a new kind of fear. Women in particular suddenly became targets of strict new rules and brutal punishments, which were enforced in the open, where everyone could see. They marked an entire generation of Afghan women, and the fear still haunts the country today. Afghanistan already had many problems in the 1970s, but daily life still offered women chances they would later lose. In Kabul, Herat, and Mazar-i-Sharif, women could study in universities, work in offices, and move around without fear of being stopped. Kabul University had thousands of female students during the mid-70s, especially in medicine, literature, and law. Hospitals relied heavily on female nurses and doctors because many patients preferred being treated by women. In big offices and banks, it wasn't unusual to see women handling paperwork or meeting customers. Girls walked to school with backpacks and books in their hands. Some wore headscarves, some didn't. Families spent weekends in public places like gardens and lakes. Afghan radio played music. Movies were shown in cinemas, and bookstores sold novels from writers across the region. Even though the country was conservative in many areas, cities had a light, hopeful atmosphere. Women felt they had space to grow and dream. But this calm life changed fast when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979. The fighting destroyed roads, homes, and whole neighborhoods. Rockets hit cities that used to feel peaceful. Many families left everything behind and escaped to Pakistan or Iran. The war killed around 1 million Afghans over 10 years, and it damaged the country more than anything before. Different local militias formed during the fighting, each with its own leader and style of control. Some tried to help locals, while others behaved violently. When the Soviets left in 1989, people hoped things would get better, but the militias started fighting each other for power. From 1992 to 94, Kabul became extremely dangerous. Rockets landed on markets, buses, and houses almost daily. Families lived in fear, unsure when the next attack would hit. Women still tried to continue their lives, but freedom slowly shrank as the fighting grew worse. The country was exhausted. People wanted peace, order, and someone who could stop the endless battles. In this chaos, a new group rose. They said they would clean the country of corruption and stop the warlords. They were called the Taliban. They first appeared in 1994 near Kandahar. Their leader, Mullah Mohammed Omar, was a former fighter who had lost an eye during the Soviet War. Many early members were young men who had grown up in refugee camps and studied in religious schools where education was limited mostly to religious texts. They were disciplined, strict, and determined to bring their own version of law to Afghanistan. People in southern Afghanistan were tired of thefts, kidnappings, and militias asking for bribes. When the Taliban punished a group of local criminals in 1994, many villagers saw them as a solution. Support spread quickly, and within a year, they controlled major parts of Kandahar province. By early 1995, the Taliban moved north and east. They captured Ghazni, Zabul, and parts of Helmand. Their fighters marched with little resistance because many warlord groups were weakened or unpopular. As they advanced, they shut down local courts and replaced them with their own judges. By mid-96, they controlled large areas across the south and west. Then came the biggest moment in September 1996. After 2 days of fighting, they entered Kabul. Government leaders fled, and the Taliban announced the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Life changed instantly. Women heard that they could no longer work in offices, hospitals, or schools. Girls' schools were closed in the first few weeks. Clothing rules became strict, and leaving home without a male relative became dangerous. Music, movies, and many forms of entertainment disappeared overnight. At first, these rules were mostly spoken of as warnings. Some people thought they might soften over time. But as the Taliban grew more organized, they began enforcing the rules in the open. They punished anyone who broke even the smallest restriction. And this was the moment when fear became real. Ghazi Stadium, once used for football matches, became one of the first locations where punishments took place. Later, the larger Kabul Sports Stadium was used as well. These places were chosen because thousands could gather there, and the Taliban wanted everyone to witness what happened to those who broke their rules. Women were brought into these stadiums after being accused of different things. One woman was taken there for walking outside without a male guardian. Another was punished because the Taliban said her shoes were too loud while she walked. A teacher who tried to return to her classroom, hoping to continue her job, was also punished. Each case was different, but the message was the same, that women had no right to move, work, or act independently under the new system. Taliban fighters carried sticks, cables, or whips. The number of lashes depended on the accusation. Sometimes it was 10. Sometimes it went beyond 30. People in Kabul had never seen punishments like this shown so openly. Women who once walked to work with confidence now stayed home for days. Families became afraid to let their daughters leave the house, even for basic needs. Hospitals struggled because experienced female workers were removed overnight. These early punishments made the Taliban realize that public fear helped them control the city easily. This confidence led them to push even harder, creating a system that would only grow more severe in the years that followed. By 1997, the Taliban's control covered most of Afghanistan. Their fighters had moved through large parts of the country, taking city after city. Herat, Farah, Nimruz, Uruzgan, and Helmand all fell under their authority. As soon as they took a city, they placed their own commanders in charge, and each commander enforced the rules in his own strict way. This meant punishments varied from place to place, but the fear felt the same everywhere. Herat became one of the harshest places for women. Mullah Abdul Manan Niazi, the Taliban commander who oversaw the region, pushed some of the most severe restrictions. Hospitals in Herat were already struggling from years of war, but when nurses showed up to help patients, they were beaten for working without permission. In Kabul, things were becoming routine in a dark way. Each week, accusations led to new cases. Some women were accused of wearing socks that were too thin. Others were said to be walking too boldly. The punishments were severe enough that many women sought treatment secretly at night. Doctors treated bruises, cuts, and broken bones while knowing they could also face punishment if the Taliban caught them helping without permission. The Taliban relied heavily on a special group they created, the Department for the Promotion of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice. Its officers walked through markets with sticks tucked under their arms. They stood on street corners, ready to question women about anything. The fear spread so deeply that windows became a source of danger. Families pushed heavy curtains over them, and daughters stayed far from the sunlight. A normal life disappeared almost entirely. In 1998, the Taliban pushed into the northern city of Mazar-i-Sharif, a large and important center with hundreds of thousands of people. The battle for the city lasted days, and when the Taliban finally took control in August, the aftermath was devastating. Many civilians died in the chaos, and the fear that followed was immediate. Women who had worked as professors at Balkh University, lawyers at local courts, or employees in government offices were removed from their positions the same week. Girls' schools shut their doors overnight, leaving thousands of students with no place to learn. The Taliban carried out house searches throughout Mazar-i-Sharif. During these raids, they punished women who were caught outside, even if they were only steps away from their door. Public squares like Chahar Su and the area around the famous Blue Mosque turned into places where punishments happened regularly. People who went to the market often returned home shaken after witnessing lashes carried out in the open. Meanwhile, in Kabul, the scale of stadium punishments grew. Thousands of people sometimes gathered because they were expected to watch. Attendance wasn't a choice, it was a demand. One case involved a woman in her 20s who was brought to the stadium after being accused of adultery. Her punishment was so severe that even some Taliban supporters later admitted privately that the scene disturbed them. But their discomfort changed nothing. The system stayed in place. In Herat, women faced different accusations. Some were punished for sewing clothes that the Taliban decided were unacceptable. Others were caught studying in hidden groups, trying to keep their education alive in secret. Their punishments were harsh and public. By 1999, the Taliban controlled almost the entire country except for a few areas in the north held by anti-Taliban forces. With so much territory under their rule, the Taliban tightened their system. They no longer relied on warnings or community pressure. They enforced their rules without hesitation, and women felt this more than anyone. Jalalabad also became a center for strict enforcement. Local Taliban commanders forced women to cover themselves in a very specific way. If any part of their clothing was considered improper, they could be stopped and punished on the spot. The Department for the Promotion of Virtue grew even more aggressive. Officers no longer waited at checkpoints or markets. They entered homes without notice, searching for anything they believed broke the rules. Women who had once worked as teachers or police officers felt especially targeted. Many of them were watched constantly by local officers because the Taliban believed they represented the old ways that had to be erased. By the year 2000, life in Afghanistan took another dark turn. A severe drought spread across the country and damaged farms in provinces like Bajis, Ghor, and Faryab. More than 3 million people struggled to find food. Many families who once lived from small harvests suddenly had empty fields. Women already pushed out of public life were hit hardest. They had no income and almost no freedom to move, so even simple tasks became risks. In many homes, women tried to take on small jobs just to survive. Some left quietly at dawn to buy bread or fetch water from public wells. Others tried to sell handmade clothes or bread to neighbors. But Taliban patrols were everywhere. Officers cracked down harder during the drought, believing any movement outside the home had to be controlled. Women caught outside without permission were punished on the spot, even if they were just trying to feed their children. In Kandahar, several women were punished after trying to work as tailors from their houses. Local commanders insisted that any form of work counted as disobedience. In Herat, a small group of women gathered secretly for literacy lessons, hoping to learn enough to help their families during the crisis. When officers found out, the women were punished publicly to warn the entire neighborhood. In Kabul, a former female doctor tried to treat a sick child in her home because the family couldn't afford to travel. Officers discovered the visit and punished her because she was practicing without official permission. Inside the Taliban, disagreements started to grow. Some leaders believed the drought was a sign that people needed stricter discipline. Hardline commanders pushed for even tighter control. Others feared that harsh punishments during a time of hunger would turn whole communities against them. But the hardliners usually overruled everyone else. As the internal fights continued, the punishments only increased. More women faced public beatings. More families tried to escape to Pakistan or Iran. Villages emptied as people searched for food and safety. And then came the year that changed everything. In September 2001, the attacks in the United States changed the world overnight. International pressure focused directly on the Taliban. Within weeks, military operations began. By mid-October, the Taliban started losing major cities one by one. Herat fell first, early in November. Kabul fell on November 13, 2001. Kandahar, the Taliban's birthplace, surrendered in December. Their system, built over 5 harsh years, collapsed in just a few weeks. During these final months, chaos ruled the streets. Records were destroyed as Taliban fighters fled. Many punishments carried out during this period were never documented, but survivors later described the same pattern. In Kabul, officers rushed to conduct a last round of public punishments before the city slipped out of their hands. Women who tried to leave the city to escape the fighting were accused of violating Taliban rules. Some were beaten in public squares where people gathered. unsure of what would happen next. But everything changed the moment the Taliban fell. For the first time in years, women stepped outside without permission. Girls returned to classrooms that had been locked for half a decade. Government offices reopened and hired female workers again. By 2002, women were back in hospitals, universities, law offices, and even public administration. From 2002 to 2020, Afghanistan lived between two different realities. In cities like Kabul, Herat, and Mazar-i-Sharif, life moved forward. It felt like the country was finally rebuilding. But away from the cities, the story was different. Rural districts faced constant fighting. The Taliban slowly returned to old strongholds, especially after 2005. They built shadow courts in places like Helmand, Uruzgan, Kunduz, Ghazni, and Paktika. These unofficial courts judged people using strict rules, similar to the system in the 1990s. And just like before, women were the first to suffer. In 2010, in Kunduz province, a woman was punished after speaking to a man she wasn't related to. In 2012, in Parwan province, Taliban members punished a woman over an accusation related to marriage. In 2015, in Badakhshan, a woman trying to escape an abusive marriage was punished by local fighters. These incidents show that the old system was still alive. The world believed the darkest chapter was over, but for many Afghan women, it felt like the past was slowly coming back. And on August 15th, 2021, it became true. As Taliban fighters entered Kabul, the government collapsed within hours. President Ashraf Ghani left the country the same day, leaving millions of people shocked and confused. Streets filled with families running toward the airport, hoping to escape before the old system returned. Within days, the changes began. The Taliban told women to stay home until further notice. Girls' high schools closed only a month after the takeover. Women who worked for TV channels, government ministries, banks, universities, and even humanitarian groups were told to stop working or wait for new instructions. The progress that took 20 years disappeared almost instantly. At first, the Taliban promised the world that things would be different this time. They said they didn't plan to bring back public punishments, but people who lived through the 1990s knew these claims meant nothing. And within weeks, signs of the old system started to appear. Patrols began questioning women on the streets. Local commanders started enforcing strict dress rules again. Families felt the same fear they had felt years earlier. The punishments restarted quietly at first. In December 2021, in Ghor province, several women were punished by local Taliban officials for what they called moral crimes. These accusations were often vague, and the women had no real chance to defend themselves. Families who tried to help were warned to stay silent. In January 2022 in Kandahar, punishments were carried out inside a large mosque after Friday prayers. People were ordered to watch. In March 2022 in Takhar province, a woman was punished after local commanders accused her of violating marriage rules. Each case reminded the country that the system had returned exactly the way people feared. Around this time, the Taliban's supreme leader, Hibatullah Agunzada, gave a clear order. He announced that traditional punishments under their interpretation of Islamic law would be fully enforced again. This message was sent to provincial governors across the country, telling them to restart public punishments without delay. After this announcement, cases spread fast. Local commanders, wanting to show loyalty, enforced the rules strictly. Every month in 2022 brought new incidents. In November, public punishments took place in several provinces, including Logar, Kapisa, and Parwan. Some involved more than 100 lashes, carried out in front of men, women, and even children. The most shocking event happened on December 7, 2002 in Farah province. A huge crowd of more than 1,000 people gathered in a stadium. Taliban officials brought several men and women to the center and carried out punishments for different accusations. The event lasted hours and was announced ahead of time so people would attend. After this, everyone understood the message. By 2023, Afghanistan had become one of the most restrictive countries for women anywhere in the world. Public punishments continued in provinces like Bamyan, Kandahar, Nuristan, and Bajis. Women who once studied engineering, journalism, medicine, agriculture, or law now stayed home every day with no clear future. Many had worked for years to build careers, only to lose everything in a matter of months. Hope slowly faded with each new rule and each new punishment. And the world watched, realizing that this wasn't a new system. The Taliban's punishments have always followed a strict structure. Nothing about them is spontaneous. Several groups make the system work: the Ministry for the Promotion of Virtue, district commanders, religious judges, and local enforcers who patrol the streets. When a case is reported, officers take it to a judge chosen by the Taliban. The woman accused usually has no lawyer, no defense, and no chance to explain her side. Decisions are made quickly. Families often stay silent because they fear being punished too. This structure barely changed from the 1990s to the 2020s. The same pattern was used again and again. Women were always the most affected because the rules shaped every part of their lives.